Hello, and welcome to this presentation for the UX Showcase. And the topic is lessons learned from attention requests. And my name is Pedro Moreira da Silva, and I'm a staff product designer working the Create stage at GitLab, and I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. And let's start with attention requests. Just one quick thing is that I hope that this is a small presentation so that it leaves time for questions. So let's see if I can go through this quickly. So attention requests, in case you didn't notice it or you weren't here at the time when we released this. So attention requests, the problem that we were looking to solve was after when we introduced reviewers to merge requests, we now had two kinds of roles. So we had the assignee and reviewer, and this created some frustration with users that now we have two lists of merge requests, the merge request that you're assigned to and the merge request that you're listed as a reviewer. And being assigned, so being an assignee or being a reviewer does not indicate if there is any action for you to take in the merge request, only what kind of role you have. And what we were trying to see is if we could make it so that users could easily distinguish the merge request that needed their attention. So for example, in the case of the assignee, which is usually the author of the merge request, they could ask which merge requests have reviewer feedback that I need to address, and we would display those. And for the reviewer, which merge requests need my review or approval. So they would immediately know which merge requests they needed to act on, and could stay assigned as reviewers. They wouldn't need to remove themselves. You can see the image on the left side of that dropdown that we still have today in the product that says assigned to you and review requests for you. This was a byproduct of our introduction of reviewers with these two separate lists. And again, looking at that dropdown, you don't know exactly how many merge requests you need to act on, or you're just waiting for someone to reply. So the attention requests feature that we designed, validated, developed, and then released behind a feature flag wanted to mimic the common ping pong or table tennis that we have in code review, where we hand over the merge request and the ball, so to speak, to different people at different moments in the code review process. And you can see some images on the right showing how we would extend that drop-down to highlight only the merge requests that need your attention, and you would have an access to a list that would show only those merge requests, and also below a small image of the merge request sidebar with those caret icons that would point and highlight which people need to take action next or that we're waiting on. But after an incredible amount of thoughtful conversation, tough questions, and retrospective, we ultimately decided to not ship attention requests. And while there were many positive experiences, improvements, and lessons learned, there were just too many outstanding concerns we did not feel we could appropriately address while still maintaining the bar of usability we have for ourselves in this area of the product. In particular, two foundational issues that were that it added confusion to notifications and wasn't properly integrated into the existing handover moments in the user's journey. To learn more about these issues and the decision, I encourage you to watch the video or see the slides linked from this slide. And now we get to the UX root cause analysis. So attention requests was a large project where we saw for the first time two designers working in one group on the same problem. It was also a project that took over a year from first designs to implementation. So we were hopeful about capturing a lot of potential process improvements that would be relevant for scaling up our UX team. And so for these reasons, the attention request project was selected to pilot the root cause analysis in UX. And this slide links to a specific section of our UX handbook that talks a bit more about this. But in a nutshell, the purpose of a blameless root cause analysis, or RCA for short, is to review the details and process of a project and reflect on what went well and opportunities for improvement. A root cause can never be a person, and so the way of writing has to refer to the system and the context rather than the specific actors. So that's why it is blameless. As the core of the root cause analysis, we use the 5 whys exercise in a blameless manner. And so the 5 whys exercise, you start with a key moment or ceremony in the project, and you question why it happened. And you keep iterating, asking why 5 times until you get ideally to the root cause of that moment. All of the members of the UX team that were involved in the attention requests came together in a confidential issue to participate in the RCA, which is linked from this slide. And so what did we learn? So to start, the most important thing to remember is that not shipping attention requests does not mean we failed in some way, or that we should be discouraged about the work that we did. We designed, researched, built, and got feedback, and we will repeat that cycle to make the best things for our users. And this is iteration. We learned through iteration. One particular aspect that I want to highlight throughout the whole process, and particularly in the end when we were making this decision, was that we felt safe about deciding not to launch. There was psychological safety. We didn't need to ask for permission. It was a decision we made as a group because we are the DRIs. And throughout the whole process, everyone felt safe having tough discussions. Everyone was focused on results and collaborated with a no ego kind attitude. And now I'm going to, there were, multiple issues that were highlighted, but the most visible issue that we ran into were the gaps in the research and design work. And 3 specific points under that. The first one is that it took more than a year from our first thoughts about attention requests to enabling the feature. And we think that because all of this took so long, it caused a certain complacency from the team. It created blind spots and confusions for users in things that otherwise would seem completely normal and expected to us. We were eager to ship something because we've been working and we were exposed to the work for so long. We just wanted it to get out. And we unconsciously fell for the trap of assuming our users would have as much institutional knowledge about how the feature works as we do. Second point, a lack of close and continuous design collaboration, which would allow for proper review and supported improvement of the work, especially early in the project. Third point is about research, changes that are complex or multifaceted that cascade into more than one area of the product require more research diligence and certainty of design. And this certainty, as far as research is concerned, means taking a step back to ensure that we're addressing a real user need with a correct solution. It means greater rigor in all parts of the project. But it can be very hard to know when a greater level of rigor is called for, especially in this case, where we had a lot of customer feedback, a lot of historical feedback, and other evidence that this problem existed. And finally, we were designing around dispersed moments instead of being focused on the user journey and looking at all of its parts. We didn't map the changes to its effects on the user journey. And I'm going to stop here and generalize by saying that most, if not all, of these are large cultural issues that are not exclusive to this project. And we're seeing them happen across almost all teams at GitLab. And some will take longer to solve and will need multiple actions from different angles, and we may need to iterate our way through them. But I'm confident that we can do it because I've witnessed us overcome similar challenges in the last 6 years to get to the high level of maturity that we have today as a design organization. Some possible improvements that were floated around in the RCA issue. For collaboration, I created an issue a while ago to enable closer collaboration between pair designers. And this is something that I'm willing to take the lead and try to make a proposal of how we can solve this in a small way. About the design aspects, document flows in an easy to digest format, mapping the changes to the user journey, also documenting our assumptions, questions, and answers. And specifically that part about mapping changes to the user journey, we're working slowly on this, for example, with the work we're doing on the jobs to be done. But I believe that visualizing those jobs to be done as user journeys can unlock a lot of benefits for everyone. So maybe, who knows, in a few quarters, we can have an OKR to productize the way to create user journeys, similar to how we're productizing UX roadmaps. And in terms of validation, an idea that floated around was how to explain how the validation spectrum that we have in the product development flow, which is linked from there, how can we show how that spectrum is applied to the GitLab reality? So for example, situation X needs thorough validation, but situation Y can be validated with internal users only, or even situation Z can be validated live with users. To improve this validation spectrum before making any changes, we could start by gathering feedback from the whole department, as it's likely a very common challenge for everyone. So yeah, I hope it was a small presentation. And now I want your questions, your reactions, and try to make this a bit more of a dialogue. So my questions to you now are, have you faced these problems before, and what do you think we can do to address them? Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving such a great summary and also so many small details, but a really good overview of our attention requests. It's a project that I really think we have learned a ton from, and that I also have mentioned multiple times that not shipping was indeed really the best decision and has brought the best to the team. I think Lauren has the first question.
Yeah, everyone on the team doesn't see it as a failure, and yeah, just putting more emphasis on the learning aspects. I think it's the most important part, and I'm happy that it resonated and it translated well in the presentation. So thanks, Lauren. So I'm surprised that no one else has ever faced these problems before, and no one has one, even small suggestion of how we think we could do to address them.
Okay, I'll go and break the silence. So, I mean, something that I faced in pipeline execution wasn't exactly like, it wasn't very similar to this use case, but it happened so that on the pipeline list view, there came a moment when we actually lost sight of what was the primary jobs to be done that that page was closely associated with. And we still get a lot of requests, and it was the same. It has always been the same for that page, that people want a lot of functionalities to be there. They want a lot of ease of, like, a lot of options to make their own workflows convenient. There are many different personas that come and interact with that page, and each work in a different way. They have their own concerns when they land there. So we kind of, while we were working on all of those requests, there came a moment where we failed to understand, like, how this one small change can actually make this one person's life easier, maybe, but it will cause disruption to everybody else. And that's when we had to do a small rollback. I talked about this at the previous UX showcase that I presented, and how Marcel had helped me, like, create, like, retrospect on the whole process and make a list of things that should be done differently or should be changed in the process. But for our team, we became so much more cautious from that moment onwards. Like, we started to ask so many different questions, and the whole process of validating problems, especially for that specific area in the product, it changed. And it wasn't just like me doing things differently. I saw the entire team um, taking every feedback, every suggestion with a pinch of salt, and thinking a lot about it, asking a lot of questions around it. So those were the positive impacts of that incident on the team. And so I'm kind of glad that happened, because what we rolled back was a really small thing. But what if it was something bigger that caused more disturbance to users? That would have been like a real pain.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Vithika. Yeah, I think that is sometimes a byproduct of how fast we want to ship things. And coming back to that point about the rigor of design and research, and where do we strike the balance between too much design work and too much research and not enough. I think that's a balance that is difficult to strike in code review, because it is a very actively used area of GitLab. We faced similar things in the past where we did certain changes, and after getting live feedback from users, we had to roll back those changes. And I think over time, it kind of it had the same effect that you were describing, where the team felt that they needed to be a bit more cautious in and had a bit more reassurance that what we're doing is the right thing. And again, I think we have to make sure that we don't fall into the other extreme where everything needs to be thoroughly tested and designed. And only then, after we have 100%, we're 100% sure that it will work, that we release it. So yeah, that's why I think one of the ideas that I shared was, how can we talk a little bit more about that validation spectrum applied to the GitLab reality and applied to the GitLab stages. For example, just a quick idea. Imagine if the area that you're making changes has above X% of our total active users, or more than X 100,000 users per month. Maybe you need to take more rigor here or not, or you can test it live with users. So I think having more examples in practice of how different methods apply to how we work at GitLab could help us validate things better.
Yeah, I really like your response. And in fact, that opens up a premise for future UX showcases if anybody wants to like take that as a topic to showcase the spectrum of validation methodologies that we use and which are the appropriate use cases for using those.
I think I'm next. Merge trains comes to mind. I'm not sure if everybody were all around the time we released merge trains. I was a designer for release back then, and we didn't do the validation. We were trying to dog food the feature, and assumptions that we just know how we want it to work, right? But there are so many edge cases, and Vitika can speak for that now. Since she is the DRI for that category. But I remember that when I was first assigned to that, and we did not prioritize research, we did not prioritize validation, and there were so many confusions within the team about what the feature was going to look like and behave like. I knew in my heart that this is gonna be ugly. And we ended up rolling it back from production once it was released, because it was released enabled by default, and people just didn't know why their pipelines were not being merged anymore, why things were not working the way they were, and they couldn't disable it. Also, documentation wasn't complete. Anyways, a lot of gaps. So it was a nightmare. So I really appreciate you showing Pedro the lessons learned, and also how we can continue to advocate not only to bridge the gaps, but to speak with the users and for the users, and not just look at the how fast we're shipping things into production. And I remember, I'm going to say that it really hurt me at the time. I think it was Sid that referred to merge trains as the Comic Sans of the GitLab features. And I hurt because I knew that, we need to research this. We just didn't. And yeah, it has happened before. So again, appreciate Pedro, the candor, and also the transparency today.
Thank you, Ren. Thank you for that example, and thanks for sharing that apparent failure that can be turned to something positive. Comic Sans is widely used still today, so it's not necessarily a failure. No, joking aside, no, I think that maybe, so one question to you, that was a while back. Do you think, if you had to guess, if we were to start merge trains today, would you think that we would be in a better place as a team, as a company, to design and validate it and so on?
Yeah, definitely. This was a time where we did not think of or talk about jobs to be done, right? We were such a much smaller team, but also I think the way that the organization was set up almost 4 years ago, I think this was 4 years ago, is that we're working as a UX team, but I think we have the frameworks that are in place today, right? And the way that we support each other throughout the organization also helps us to have the conversations that we're having here today, right? And also include our PMs, our counterparts. I do think we are in a better place because I remember that I was new to the company, and then the PM came and said, we have to build this, and the backend engineers were already coding it. I was like, I need to research. I don't know what this is. Are the companies doing that? No, we don't have time. And it was not a conversation, right? So I think we are in a much healthier place today to raise a flag and say, like, no, we have to do a certain thing. We need to understand the problem better. We need to, be more confident before pushing something so large that there's a risk of breaking our own workflows just because we already promised it. So yes, I do feel confident, and I've seen things improve for the better. And Vitika is working on it. So sorry, Vitika, if I wasn't able to research merge trains before you inherited it, but
it's difficult to research about that. It's very difficult to recruit participants for a merge train research, right?
Yeah, no one else is doing it. It's just like when we do things for Runner as well, right? It's so it's complex, but it's also so GitLab flavored. But at the same time, like, what does the community want? What would our customers want? We were really looking at how are we going to dog food that, but we didn't think of the edge cases because, yeah, we'll talk about them as we learn what we want from this feature. But yeah, things have improved definitely. But sorry, I kind of went.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, no, I think that's the important part that is worth highlighting is that with these examples, you with merge trains, Vithika with her other example in the pipeline list view, is that when bad things happen or when things don't go in the direction that we were hoping for, what I've seen throughout the years at GitLab is that for most things, we end up learning and we end up changing and improving. And I think that's what we should emphasize and then take from this, and don't feel discouraged about these apparent failures and the fact that, the organization is never going to change, or, oh, we can't do this, or this is going to be much work to change. It is possible. So yeah, having these examples, it's good.
Get up, everybody.
I got the next question for you, Pedro. Well, I guess it's a bit of a reflection point too. So just hearing your presentation, it makes me think about some of the challenges that come with reviewing community contributions. One thing that stands out in my mind is it can sometimes feel like I want to have this feature in the product. So therefore, if I create a merge request for it, it should belong there. And this can feel like a balancing act when you're both trying to manage like your own like group and stage work alongside when an unknown feature request appears. If you were to look at it from the different perspective of like, what if a community contributor had submitted attention requests? How do you think you would have like addressed that differently, or how would you maybe have coached them, knowing that we eventually did roll back this feature, but I mean, I liked it. So like, what if I just opened a code change and I wanted it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in general, we still struggle in the areas of highest usage with the number of community contributions and the complexity of community contributions. For example, even in pipeline execution, if there's a big change that people want to introduce, it's a very used area, like code review, like source code and others. So what do we do there? One example that I can give you of how to balance that is there was a customer that wanted to introduce the button that is the opposite of approving in merge request. So it would be like a disapprove button or blocking button or something like that. They wanted something that would effectively allow you to block the merge requests. And until I, Pedro, go in there and remove my block, it won't be merged. And they were actually almost ready to start a contribution. They were, even they typed out a comment saying, oh, we're like, if this is okay with you, next week we will start a community contribution for that button. And me and Kai, we were like screaming, oh no, they're gonna start working on this. And I mean, we haven't figured this out yet, and we have these assumptions that maybe it's not going to go well. And we shared these assumptions with them. But more than that, we took the time to go into the issues, look at competition, look into many different sources, and try to put together, as quickly as we could, some kind of problem validation and some possible paths of how this could go. And ultimately, we decided that it didn't make sense at the present moment to introduce that feature. And we shared that with the customer, and they were not necessarily satisfied with the whole response, because I mean, they still wanted that to happen, but we gave them some directions on what they could do today to partially address their goal and what other paths we could see in the future. And so one of the things that we did was actually to create a separate issue just for feedback about a very specific part of that problem, because it was a big problem and there were very many different use cases. So all of this to say, like, this is just an example, but I think that's part of what we're maybe not doing so well today is planning for the unexpected. And that means planning a lot of our time, especially in the highest usage areas, for community contributions, and making sure that we take time away from milestone work and keep time open for community contributions, even if it is just going into issues and making sure that those are well prepared if someone wants to pick them up. Because, yeah, I think we keep getting surprised by community contributions, and it doesn't need to be that way. And they're very disruptive because we don't make time for them. And again, I think that's something that we've been learning over the years, and I think we're getting better and better. So it's great to have these conversations.
That's a really great example. Thanks for sharing that one, specifically around the disprove concept. I think that really helped highlight an opportunity for improvement for myself, and I'm sure for others as well. Marcel, do you want to cover your points?
Sure. I also added another example where customers wanted to add the ability for administrators to disable the download button. And because this didn't adhere with our principles and actually didn't really solve the problem that users were asking for, we also ended up closing that community contribution. There's also some interesting comments you can see in the merge request, but it's really good to see sometimes these highlights of when have we done stuff like this and why, to really figure out, like, is the community contribution I'm reviewing right now maybe also something that should be considered as something that we rather don't want to have in our product. And generally, the more UX eyes we can have on these complex situations, the better it is. I have looked at quite some community contributions, and even I am sometimes standing in front of one and I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And then bring it up to other people, talking about it as a group. And we have a great team. We have so many people from different time zones. There will always be somebody who you can chat with. So bringing it back to the team and discussing it as a larger department can really help us make these decisions. So don't feel like you're alone when you're reviewing a UX community contribution, but bring it back to the team when you're unsure. I think this concludes our UX showcase, unless anybody else wants to add something. That's not the case. Wonderful. So I'm going to hit stop recording.